Breaking tonight, a clash that no one saw coming has just ignited a political and cultural firestorm across Britain. Former UK Special Forces officer Ant Middleton has struck back, unleashing words that have shaken the establishment to its core. It began as a televised debate, a routine exchange between a soldier turned celebrity and a presenter known for his sharp tongue and controversial takes. But within seconds, the calm turned to chaos. Middleton's voice cut through the air like a warning shot, and the studio fell silent. "You don't understand what real courage looks like," he said. And in that moment, every camera, every viewer, and every official watching knew something historic had just happened. What followed wasn't just a war of words. It became a national reckoning. Ant Middleton, the man once celebrated for his fearless discipline, later condemned by media elites for being too direct, had drawn a line, and opposite him sat Adil Ray, a man whose rise through the world of television and politics made him both admired and despised. Their exchange wasn't merely personal, it symbolised something deeper, a confrontation between Britain's forgotten backbone and its self-appointed moral guardians. Within hours, clips of the moment spread across social media, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all flooded with one question: who really speaks for Britain now? In the footage, Middleton's expression never faltered, calm, cold, precise, like a man trained to speak only when it mattered most. Ray tried to respond, his voice stumbling as the words fell apart. Viewers called it the most uncomfortable silence ever seen on live television. Behind that silence, though, something powerful stirred. It wasn't just about two men arguing, it was about the nation's identity. What it means to be British, what it means to stand for something when everyone else chooses to kneel. By midnight, the BBC was under fire. ITV executives were summoned. Ministers quietly discussed whether the moment could inflame tensions across an already divided public, but it was too late. The people had already taken sides. Veterans rallied behind Middleton, calling him a man who dared to say what millions think. Meanwhile, Ray's supporters accused him of being ambushed, insisting that the show had been turned into a political weapon. Neither narrative was entirely true, yet both burned through the country like wildfire. In London, reporters crowded outside Middleton's home. He refused to apologise. "I've seen what happens when men lie to protect power," he said to the cameras, his voice steady, his gaze direct. "And I won't do it." Those words echoed through every corner of the internet. He wasn't just defending himself, he was challenging an entire culture of fear, one that punishes honesty and rewards conformity. For many, that defiance was the spark they'd been waiting for. The Prime Minister's office refused to comment, but insiders whispered that the government did not appreciate the timing. With a growing crisis in Parliament, economic tensions rising, and the monarchy under increasing public scrutiny, the last thing the establishment wanted was a working-class war hero publicly exposing their hypocrisy. Yet Middleton had done just that, and with surgical precision. Adil Ray, meanwhile, stayed silent. His Twitter feed went dark. His colleagues avoided interviews, but inside the industry, panic spread. Producers debated whether to cut the clip from future broadcasts, fearing legal or political consequences. Yet doing so would only prove Middleton's point, that truth in modern Britain comes second to control, and that's exactly what made his message so dangerous. Because when truth becomes dangerous, even silence becomes political. Across pubs, social clubs and online forums, people began comparing Middleton to the soldiers who had once returned home only to find themselves forgotten. They called him the voice of the voiceless, a man unafraid to speak in a country that punishes plain speech. Others accused him of stoking division, of dragging Britain backward into an era of anger and blame. But that argument couldn't stop the movement forming behind him. By dawn, the story had crossed borders. International media picked it up. From New York to Sydney, from Moscow to Toronto. Ex-SAS hero takes on woke Britain, one headline read. "A battle for the soul of the UK," said another. Suddenly, Middleton wasn't just a former soldier or a reality star. He was the symbol of something larger, a resistance, a reminder that patriotism was not a dirty word. And behind it all, one question echoed louder than any politician's promise, louder than any royal statement or government denial. Has Britain finally had enough? Because if one man's voice could silence an entire studio, what would happen when millions started speaking too? By the next morning, The confrontation had evolved into a national crisis. Newsrooms were scrambling, politicians were calculating, and the public was dividing faster than anyone could control. Major outlets refused to replay the full segment, citing editorial balance, but the raw clip was already unstoppable. Re-uploaded, re-edited, remixed with patriotic music, and shared millions of times. Middleton spoke for us, one caption read. Finally, someone with the courage to stand up, said another. And with every new share, the pressure on the establishment grew heavier. Adil Ray reappeared briefly on social media. One carefully written post, polished and approved by handlers. He said the exchange had been misunderstood, that he respected every veteran's service, and that Britain must remain a country of empathy, not hostility. But the response was brutal, with thousands of angry comments flooded his feed. Veterans accused him of arrogance, citizens accused him of hypocrisy, and even a few well-known presenters questioned his tone. It wasn't just a backlash, it was a turning point. Meanwhile, Middleton's words were being studied like evidence in a courtroom. Every pause, every glare, every syllable replayed in slow motion. Was it defiance or rebellion? Government advisers debated it behind closed doors. According to leaks from Whitehall, senior officials in the Home Office believed the situation had become a symbol of populist anger, one that could spiral out of control if not contained. It's not just Middleton, one aide warned. It's what he represents. A Britain tired of being lectured. Within 48 hours, a petition began circulating, demanding Middleton be reinstated to all media contracts and given a public platform to speak for those who served. It hit 100,000 signatures in less than 6 hours, and while Parliament ignored it, the silence spoke louder than any statement. Something had shifted in the national mood, a sense that the old order could no longer dictate who got to speak and who didn't. Behind the scenes, however, powerful forces were moving. PR firms were briefed. Journalists were offered exclusive angles, and anonymous sources began whispering about Middleton's past, trying to drag up anything that could damage his credibility. Old comments, misquoted lines, out of context remarks suddenly resurfaced across tabloids. The pattern was familiar. When truth becomes inconvenient, smear becomes the weapon of choice. But this time it didn't work. The audience didn't flinch. They'd seen too many reputations destroyed for speaking out. And this time, the people refused to be manipulated. In one chilling broadcast, a former intelligence analyst even hinted that Middleton's influence could become a security concern. The anchor pressed for clarification, but the expert simply said, when millions start listening to one man instead of the government, history tells us what happens next. It was an insinuation, but one heavy enough to darken the air. For the first time, the state was treating words like weapons. Meanwhile, Sir Middleton himself stayed mostly silent, only one brief appearance on an independent podcast. I don't care what they say about me, he told the host, his voice quiet but cutting. What I care about is that the truth has become dangerous in this country. We're told to obey, not to think, to nod, not to ask. That ends now. The clip went viral instantly. Thousands called it the speech Britain needed. Others warned it could ignite something that can't be put out. Outside the media bubble, the consequences were becoming real. Protests began forming in Birmingham, Manchester and Cardiff. Peaceful but passionate, crowds carried placards reading, "We won't be silenced," and "Respect those who serve." At first, police maintained distance, but as the gatherings grew, tensions sharpened. A few arrests followed. Footage of officers pushing veterans, men in uniform, triggered outrage far beyond politics. The symbolism was too powerful to ignore. Within hours, the Prime Minister was forced to address the situation in a press conference. His face was tight, his tone rehearsed. "We must come together, not divide ourselves," he said. Words matter. But for many, that sounded hollow, the voice of a man trying to calm a fire with petrol. Questions from reporters grew sharper. Do you condemn the treatment of veterans? Do you support freedom of speech? Do you believe Middleton went too far? The Prime Minister dodged each one. By the end of the briefing, even loyal newspapers called it a disaster. At Buckingham Palace, silence, yet insiders whispered that King Charles had been briefed. He was reportedly concerned by the mood of the country, calling it the loudest silence in living memory. Some claimed he had even considered making a rare statement on unity. Those senior advisers urged him not to. The monarchy, they said, must stay neutral. But neutrality in a moral crisis often looks like indifference. And indifference to a nation on edge is dangerous. Adil Ray, now cornered, finally accepted a live interview on another channel. The segment was heavily promoted, his first words since the clash. Yet the moment began, his confidence was gone. "I didn't mean to offend anyone," he repeated. But before he could finish, the interviewer interrupted. "Do you think Ant Middleton was wrong?" Ray hesitated. The pause was long enough to tell the truth. Even when he spoke, the words rang hollow. I think he crossed a line." The interviewer nodded, but the audience didn't. The reaction online was instant and furious. He still doesn't get it. No accountability. Too late. The divide was complete. One side demanding apology, the other demanding revolution. And somewhere between those lines, Britain found itself at a crossroads. Was this just another TV scandal, or the beginning of a reckoning that could tear open the political order itself? By the end of that week, the storm had become something far greater than a media scandal. It had evolved into a national confrontation, one that no government department, broadcaster or royal advisor could quietly contain. Britain was no longer debating a TV moment, it was debating its soul. Across every pub, table and office corridor, every school staff room and factory floor, the same question echoed: who controls the truth now? The Home Office had grown restless. Intelligence briefings began describing the Middleton effect, a wave of disillusionment spreading through ordinary Britons who felt betrayed by a system that no longer listened. Reports warned of unrest potential and public trust erosion. Yet instead of reflection, ministers turned to strategy. Leaks revealed they were considering a new broadcast responsibility bill designed to prevent the spread of harmful narratives. Critics called it censorship, supporters called it protection, but everyone understood what it really was, an attempt to silence the storm rather than face it. At the same time, anonymous officials began feeding stories to sympathetic journalists. Overnight, headlines appeared questioning Middleton's character, his past missions, even his finances. Former SAS star under scrutiny, one paper wrote, while another suggested possible ties to political activists. But the smear campaign failed before it began. Ordinary people saw through it. They'd watched the same tactics destroy others, from whistleblowers to reformers, and they recognised the pattern. It wasn't about justice, it was about control. Middleton broke his silence again in a late-night address streamed from an unassuming office. No studio lights, no makeup, no script. Just a soldier speaking to the nation. "I've spent my life serving this country," he said, his voice rough but steady. "And I'm watching leaders who serve only themselves. I'm watching the people being told they don't matter. I'm watching veterans, nurses, farmers, parents, forgotten by those they elected. And I'm telling you now, it ends here." Those words cut through Britain like a blade. Within hours, the video hit 10 million views. By morning, it was being quoted in Parliament. Opposition MPs accused the Prime Minister of failing to grasp the public mood. Labour spokespeople called it reckless populism. Yet behind the walls of Westminster, unease was spreading. They could feel the shift. The narrative was no longer theirs. Adil Ray attempted another defence. A lengthy editorial in a Sunday newspaper calling for respectful dialogue and warning against militarised speech. But even his allies admitted privately that the damage was irreversible. The story had escaped his control. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about a nation split between those who demanded obedience and those who demanded truth. Protests resumed. Larger now, more organised. Thousands gathered outside Parliament waving Union Jacks, carrying banners reading, "We will not be silent." Veterans stood side by side with young families. Retirees with students, police officers with former soldiers. It was a cross-section of a country that had stopped believing in its elites. For the first time in decades, London felt like the centre of a people's movement, not a politician's stage. That night, emergency meetings were held at Downing Street. Advisers warned the Prime Minister that any crackdown could spark civil unrest. One aide suggested reaching out to Middleton privately to re-establish mutual respect. Another dismissed the idea entirely, calling it beneath the dignity of the government. The Prime Minister hesitated. He knew whichever choice he made would define his legacy, to confront the truth or to crush it. Meanwhile, the palace reportedly remained in silent observation, yet rumours swirled that King Charles had requested a personal briefing on the matter, concerned by the growing divide between people and power. Some insiders whispered that the king admired Middleton's honourable defiance, though no public statement was ever made. Still, that whisper was enough. By dawn, social media was ablaze. The king is watching. As the weekend approached, tension reached breaking point. Parliament Square was filled with tens of thousands chanting Middleton's name. Police lines stretched across Westminster Bridge. Helicopters hovered overhead. The world was watching, not through the lens of politics, but history. In the crowd, some carried signs quoting Middleton's words, "Truth has become dangerous." Others simply held flags and silent, defiant, proud. Then, just before midnight, a sudden development. Middleton's official accounts went offline. His YouTube channel vanished, his X profile suspended, his Facebook page blank. Within minutes, they silenced, him began trending worldwide. The government refused to comment. Broadcasters called it a technical issue. But no one believed it. The silence was too calculated, too clean. Yet before dawn, a short video appeared on an encrypted platform. Just 10 seconds long, Middleton speaking directly to the camera, eyes burning with determination. "You can take the platform," he said, "but not the truth. This isn't over." Then the feed cut to black. Across Britain, the reaction was instant. Cheers, tears, fury, disbelief. The question was no longer about one man or one argument. It was about whether truth could still survive in a nation drowning in control. Could integrity still exist when power feared it? The Prime Minister held an emergency address the next morning, calling for calm and unity. But even as he spoke, protest bells rang outside. The crowd's roar drowned him out. He looked out the window and saw the people rising.